Today we're back with another Ride 6 video, where I'll be running through my top 5 tips for new players. These tips are perfect for players picking up Ride for the first time. Right, let's jump in with tip number 1. One of the best things you can do from the very first startup of the game is enable arcade mode. If you are brand spanking new to any sort of motorcycle game, this will make the game a lot more easy to get to speed with. Riding bikes is a lot different from driving cars. There's a lot more going on that you think about. If you're new to it, it can be a bit overwhelming when you're playing on the pro setting. So if you are really new to this genre, I definitely would recommend trying out the arcade for maybe the first 10, maybe 20 hours of gameplay, just to have a rough idea how a bike turns, how it stops and accelerates. In the arcade mode, it turns off a lot of the physics behind the game and turns up the ECU settings to max, turns on anti-lock braking systems. It makes it a lot more easy. It's pretty much impossible to crash provided you don't hit an object or another rider. For me, it is perfect for the very first initial play if you haven't played the game, so definitely try out arcade if you are new to the series. The second tip might come across a bit weird, but trust me, it'll be brilliant for newer players. Stay away from superbikes. Of course, on the cover of most ride games is a modern day superbike or a real powerful bike, and everyone wants to jump on and ride their favourite superbike, whether it be a ZX10, Fireblade, V4, whatever it may be. But if you're new to these games, they are the hardest bike to ride. I'm on a ZX4 RR here in this clip on Almeria, and these bikes are a lot more fun. The corner speed is quite high, they're pretty easy on the brakes, there's not a lot of power to them. You can run them with minimal ECU settings and you get away with a lot more. So this is a great way, paired with coming off maybe the arcade setting, jumping onto something like a ZX4, and you'll have a lot more fun. You'll just figure out the game and understand, again, just the basics a lot easier. Corners come at you slower, the braking distance are just nice and easy, and you can actually start to feel like you're in control of the bike. Whereas on a superbike, there's a lot much more going on with the ECU, with the way the bike handles, the brakes, the tires, the acceleration. There's just so much more going on that it really doesn't kind of suit to use a much harder bike. So starting off, definitely stay lower CC. You'll have more fun, you'll win more races, and it'll just be an overall more enjoyable experience. So for my third tip, it will be definitely to check out the ECU and make sure you're running the right settings for you. So of course, on track you can see the overlay in the bottom right, and you have ABS, traction control systems, anti-wheelie, engine braking, and then you have your power mapping. So we start with the top. ABS, basically it'll stop you from locking the brakes. It drastically reduces the power to the brakes. For me, I wouldn't run it very high. I wouldn't run it at all, to be honest, because it's definitely a lot slower, because it will basically, its front wheel starts to under rotate, it'll just release the brake pressure, so you'll feel very numb on the brakes. So I wouldn't run that at all personally. If you were really struggling with the front, which I don't think is that much of an issue in this game, you could consider using it, but I reckon the engine braking will help you, which I'll explain in a second. In terms of traction, the higher the number, the more traction control assist you have. Essentially what it does, it'll just cut power from the throttle to the rear wheel. So if you're running at a really high number, you'll probably feel like the bike is almost nearly misfiring out of the corner, because it just won't accelerate like you expected. If you run it too low, on the edge of the tyre, first touch of throttle can cause severe slides and skids with the rear tyre, and more often not leading to a crash. For now, as a newer player, I would keep it around 3, and if you're still struggling, bump it up to 4, but we can also play with the power mode, which I'll talk about in a sec. But mainly, keep the traction quite high. It makes the bike easier to ride, it's safer, and more importantly, it keeps it in line, which is very useful on this game. Next up, we have anti-wheelie. Of course, this is pretty much the same as traction in terms of the higher the number, the more it cuts power. It cuts power when the bike starts to wheelie, so in game the game knows when the front wheel comes up off the ground. If it's on 5, it'll have that, what I would class as like a misfire effect, where you feel like the bike is just holding back. That will be the anti-wheeling cutting in. So again, you don't need to run this as high. I'd probably go maybe 3 or 4 depending on what bike you're running. Like I said, if you do run some of the lesser CC bikes, 250s, 400s, that kind of style thing, a lot of these ECU settings won't be that hard to figure out, but they're still good to know. And in terms of the engine brake, this is really important. The higher the number, the more engine braking effect. And what that does, it under rotates the rear tire with the engine, really slows the bike down, and that creates a very sliding effect with the rear tire. For me, a lower number as a newer player is better, because on this game, especially if you're in the pro settings, in the game experience, it is very easy to lose a front when the rear end slides a lean. So for me, running a lower engine brake, 1 if not 2, would be ideal for the newer player, because it just makes it easier on corner entry. You don't have as much stopping power from the rear, but more importantly, you don't have the rear slides. And then finally, power. So again, if you are struggling with the TC and you want to run it lower, you can also play with the power mapping. You have 3 power mappings. You have full, which is max power, you have eco, which is a little less, and then you have rain, which is less. Again, play with them. In some races throughout the career mode, you will need to manage your fuel, and that is how you do it. So tip number 4 comes from actually in the menus. This is a real good one. So for me, if you go to single player, you can actually choose 2 things. So first off is adaptive difficulty. Now this is brilliant for newer players because when you're new to a series or new to a game, your level can vary from track to track, and you can be 50% on some tracks, higher on some, and some lower then again. So you need to constantly change the difficulty to have the racing right. On adaptive, it'll learn your ability, and then from track to track, it should pretty much get your difficulty fairly decent. What you do is you turn on adaptive difficulty and you basically do maybe 10-15 races, and over that time it just takes data on your skill level and just makes the AI, so then it'll always be slightly in a window. It just makes the game a lot more enjoyable to play. For newer players who will be improving kind of day on day, and every hour they'll get better, the game will slowly and just gradually bring the difficulty up. So this is a great one for the newer players because it helps a lot keeping the game fun and enjoyable. Another great feature is in the collisions. This year they have brought in what is known as dynamic collisions, and you can see on the right side of the screen there, only collisions that don't cause a crash can occur. What that means is if you're going in really hot into a corner and you're about to hit an AI, if you're going in with such a speed difference, you'll actually go through them, and vice versa. If they make a mistake and cut across track and are about to knock you off, they will go through you. For newer players, this is brilliant because collisions with AI can be some of the most frustrating things as a new player. It's very difficult to race against them cleanly when you don't have perfect control over the bike, and when you're a new player, you definitely won't. So it's very easy to make small mistakes, and it's fair enough if you have a little bump here and there, but if you keep knocking each other off, it can get very frustrating. So the dynamic setting is brilliant for this, so definitely recommend checking this out. Now last but definitely not least is the camera setting. Now it might seem like a very small thing to adjust, but it can really affect the way the game plays. So start off by jumping into the pause menu on track, and you would see halfway down you have customized camera. Jump in here, pick your camera of choice. You can see on screen my settings now, and then you'll see acceleration effect, dynamic cam, and then you have kind of the speed effect as well. What they do is add kind of a movement to the screen, as you can see on screen now, where there's a lot more camera movement to simulate the speed, which I find very off-putting and actually can make it harder to spot braking markers, reference points, turning, everything on it, especially the bigger bikes. So for me, it doesn't make the game look any better, it doesn't feel any better to me, so I just turn them off immediately. Straight there you get a crisper image, you get a smoother, what feels like frame rate, because the game doesn't look like it's buffering around. So immediately turn off the acceleration, the dynamic, speed effect, and then you'll see the game just looks so much more consistent. You can easily pick out braking markers easier, and it's just a no-brainer for me. I do it on every racing game, just turn off a lot of these added effects to build speed and kind of make it feel like you're going fast. So then that is my top 5 tips for newer players to Ride 6. Which tip did you find the most helpful? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching today. I hope you have enjoyed, and I'll see you in the future for another Ride 6 video. Slán go fóill.